Does anybody have any specific questions about Word that you'd really like to get answered tonight?
I have one.
Please.
Well, and it may be something that I'm doing and I just don't know what it is, but I can be typing along and evidently I hit a key or something and the last sentence I was doing, it's like it duplicates it.
It duplicates the last sentence,
Right.
and you're typing when this is happening.
Yes.
Interesting. The only thing I could think of is you could maybe accidentally select the line by doing Shift Home.
Shift home. Okay.
Shift, like let's say you're on a line and you're even maybe at the end of the line.
Mm-hmm.
If you accidentally hold down Shift and Home, it'll select that line. You would then have to do Control C to copy it and Control V to paste it. That's an awful lot of doing.
No, this is more like I have to go back and actually delete. It's like I type a sentence and it's like I don't even know, like you said, like control home, and it puts it down there again.
That's very interesting. What version, do you know what version you're on?
Um, Let me look, as I'm not sure.
I could maybe do some investigation for you into that.
Yeah, let me figure out what version I have.
It's one of the nice things about Microsoft 365 is that it updates with Windows.
Yeah, and I don't have that. I don't have 365.
Oh, okay. So you have the full version.
Yes.
Okay, then it must be an older version because mostly they stopped selling the full version. Um,
Ah,
I mean, they still sell it, but very few people buy it now that there's 365 available.
why is that?
I think because they can make more money um, getting your $99 every year instead of your $250 just for Word or your, God, it used to be something like $600 for the whole Microsoft suite. I don't think it's that expensive anymore, but if you go looking for it, it's not as easy to find as it used to be because
Right.
they're doing Office 365, like the whole Office suite. Just like when you go to buy Word Perfect, you're not just buying Word Perfect. You're buying Word Perfect, Quattro Pro, Lightning, and there's one more thing in there, which I don't even, I've used the Corel products since 1997 and or before.
Right. And I did the same thing. I used it for years and then I finally switched to Word and
Well, I have to use both of them because I have so many customers that use, WordPerfect. Um, and WordPerfect has some wonderful abilities. Certainly, their macro abilities are superb, but unfortunately, WordPerfect in its later years has been a little bit unstable. I find that they're getting a little better about it now, but in the past, I'd say starting about 3 years ago for the past that 7 year period, um, it was very unstable. You could be in the middle of a document and it could just go poof, and it doesn't always back it up. So I always set all of my programs to create automated backups. But at one
okay.
point, you could not do that with WordPerfect. I think you can now, but anywho, let's get started talking about Microsoft Word.
Okay,
So
before I have, it's Office Home and Student 2016.
office, home and student, did you say?
Yes.
Kim, I'm gonna do some investigation for you on that
Okay, that
and
sounds
see if
great.
there's
I
a
appreciate it.
bug in that version
Okay.
because that should not be happening.
It's the craziest thing and it's so frustrating.
Yes, and the one thing that I just thought of, and I'm not saying that this is what it is, but it could be that there's some key combination that you readily accidentally hit that that does it. I don't know if it's got to be a duplicate command of some sort, but I'll look into that for you and I'll get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Happy to do it. Okay, let's get started. Here's the things that we are going to talk about today. I believe that as a court reporter, you should be able to set the defaults and the preferences and the options that are unique to you in your word processor. And we're going to talk about some of those options tonight. How to configure the page that you are working with and set margins. How to determine whether the first page behaves like all the others or not. How to utilize complex find and replace. That is a super powerful tool. Um, how to turn line numbering on and off, how to begin and format page numbering, how to work with section breaks, how to work within sections, and how to write and use macros to perform common tasks. We're also going to talk about how to print the document to a printer, to PRN, and to PDF, because you can do all of that with Microsoft Word without adding any other software. So we're definitely going to talk about that. More and more, as you'll see these days, people are asking for PDFs. And I think that's wonderful. Wonderful to be saving a few trees because in the legal profession, we sure create a whole lot of paper. Okay, what do you need to know? You need to know how to change your margins for the whole document or certain sections only. You may not even be aware that you can change margins within sections and it won't affect the other sections. The only time that I find that that is relevant is on the cover page. I find that some people like the cover page to be a little bit larger. Sometimes people will put a federal box on the cover page, but not have it in the rest of the document. You can use first page different for that, or you can just use section breaks and forget about the first page different. Um, line spacing, you've got to know how to control your line spacing, and how to get the correct number of lines per page. And that can be using your margins, mostly top and bottom margins, because we don't have to really worry about, well, there's no such thing as line height in Microsoft Word, but I'll show you how you can go in and say, well, I want 2 points before and 2 points after, or 6 points before and 2 points after. And that's how you really make a word stand out or a line stand out. I don't think that we use that so much in court reporting. Um, but we do use the line spacing before and after in WordPerfect, only we call it line height. I don't try to mess with that too much. I like to just leave it at your basic double space, or exactly 24 points. That usually will do it, but I'll show you all of that. With sections, we're going to talk about the header and the footer and how you can assure that you can change the header from one section to another and not have it affect that previous section. Oftentimes that's the case when, like almost all court reporters, put their information on the very first page at the bottom centered. yet the second and subsequent pages do not have that information, which is why we sometimes use different first page, or we put a section break right after that first page, because we don't use that same um, address, that long information again normally. We're going to talk about the spell checker and finding and replace with special formatting. When I say special formatting, I mean that you can look up, let's say that you did a job and you forgot to put in the periods after the Q&A, but you found out that specifically this firm wants the periods after the Q&A, and you've already typed the whole thing, right? Well, the easiest way to see about that is to tell Word to look for case specific, meaning don't show me any lowercase q's, only show me the uppercase q's. And you can actually even say, look for a tab before, a capital Q, and a tab after, and replace it with a tab before, a capital Q, a period, and a space, and a tab after. So you can do that, and using that special formatting makes it super easy to go and do find and replaces, like for speakers and things like that. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about adding and formatting pages. That's specifically called borders in Word, borders and shading. So we're going to talk about that as well. We're going to talk about turning on or offline numbering on the correct pages. There are as many different styles and formats as there are human beings. Everybody has a little nuance that they do in their transcript that maybe is not on the next person's transcript, even if they're from the same state. And so it's really something that we talk about a lot when it comes to line numbering. Some people will line number the entire document. Some people will do line numbers only on the proceedings. Most people don't get to decide where they're going to do it because they work for a firm or for a court, and the court maybe mandates how it's supposed to be. Depending on the state that you're in, it can be very lax or it can be very strict, as you all know. Line numbering is the whole purpose of line numbering is for reference in court. That's the whole purpose. When an attorney wants to hand that transcript to the person on the witness stand and say, would you please read lines 10 through 12 on page 42? If you recall, that's the deposition that you gave, blah, 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 right? And so that's the only reason that we put line numbers on the proceeding section. And because of that, there's no need for line numbers on the cover pages, the index pages, the certificate pages, because you're not going to reference that. The attorney's not going to reference that in court. And so line numbering is a big deal. Okay, we're going to talk first about page setup. Page setup is where we go to set our margins. And as a general rule, if you are using double space, 1.3 top and bottom margins are going to give you 25 lines per page. Now, not everybody uses 25 lines per page. You may use 24. In some states, there's 23. If you're working in a court, they may ask you to do 32. When I first started working with the military, they were doing 44 lines a page, and that was single spaced. I felt really sorry for the judges that had to read that. But they eventually changed to double space as well, and it's just a whole lot easier to read. So here's how you change the page setup, the margins. I'm going to go ahead and change my share and show you my other screen that has Word on it. And I'm actually just going to go into the layout margins here. And I normally, there's all these presets. I normally go all the way down to custom margins, and that takes me here. Now, we almost all of us that I know of at least use portrait, so that's easy. Um, Top and bottom margins for deposition reporters are almost always, they can be 1.3 top and 1.3 bottom. Whereas if you are an official, you may have to bind at the top. And if you bind at the top, then your margin at the top has to be much larger. And so in that case, I would do maybe 1.5 or 1.6 at the top, and I'd just do one at the bottom. And that would still give me my 25 lines per page. I don't mess with the multiple pages normal. I never deal with that. The preview's fine. The thing that you need to pay attention to when you have different sections in your document is applied to the whole document, because right now it's saying you can choose from whole document or this point forward, because we have no section breaks yet in our document. But once you have section breaks in your document, it will offer you a third option, which is this section only. I normally use whole document, and I try to set my margins for everything in the beginning before I even add my section breaks. Because as a general rule, we don't change the margins from one section to another. And if we do, it's only ever on the cover page. So, like I said, I do 1.3 top and 1.3 bottom. That gives me 25 lines per page. On the left, that varies a lot, but I generally do about 1.5 on the left, and on the right, I generally do 1. Um, if I have to have more characters per line, then I'll go down to 8 or even as low as 7. I don't normally go lower than that, just because it starts getting towards the edge of the page a little bit too much. Paper, I don't generally mess with that tab. Um, Layout, I don't generally mess with this tab. I don't do different odd and even pages. The only time I ever come here is to choose to do a different first page. Different first page will automatically give you a different first page without putting in a section break. I'm not a fan of that. I rather put in all of my section breaks myself and control them that way, because you can control the section breaks a little bit more when you do it that way as opposed to using different first page. The header and the footer is by default 0.5 inches from the top and the bottom of the page. You can come in here and make them smaller if you'd like for your header to be higher in the document and the footer to be lower in the document. I would not go lower than 0.3 on either if you choose to do that. I always leave vertical alignment to top. And while you can access line numbers and borders from here, I generally do not. I access it normally from another place. It's called borders and shading. So here we go, page borders. And that is what I like to do next if my page border is the same all the way through. So let's say that I do want to go ahead and do the page border. I'm going to go ahead and click on page border, and it automatically brings me up to borders and shading on the page border tab. Now, there's a few things that people like to do. I think the most common is the box, the federal box. But I also see a lot of graphic lines where there's 2 lines on the left and 1 line on the right. Those are the 2 things I see the most when we talk about graphics. So I'm going to show you how to do both of those. So the very first thing on the left-hand side is it's asking you to choose. Do you want nothing? Do you want a box, a shadow? you want it to be three-dimensional, or you want to do something custom. We do a box very simply, and I can come over here and I can choose any one of these line types to make my box. So I can go with a double line. Of course, I would never do that. We use something very basic, the basic thin line, but just to show you that you can choose what your line's made of. The color is always automatic because I leave it on black. Certainly, you can change the color of the box. It used to be that boxes were in a different color. That was so that people would know if it was a copy or not. Most people leave it on black. And here you can come down and specify the width of your line. So you can make it thicker. I never do. I leave it the way it is. So the most important thing that I do after I select box is I come down to where it says apply to whole document. Right beneath that, you'll see the word options. Let's click on that. Okay, now here in the options, I have a few interesting choices. I can tell Word how far away from my text I want to see that line. Right now, it's 24 points. So I'm going to leave it there just to show you what that looks like. I'm going to click on OK and OK. So now we see this is what comes up at first. That's not what we want, is it? Because the box is all the way over to the left. And that's not what we want at all. So I'm going to go back to page borders. And I'm going to go back to options. And I'm going to say that I want to measure from the edge of the text as opposed to the edge of the page. The edge of the page is the default. And just so that you all know, I'm sure you paid attention. I sent you all the PowerPoint in PDF and the outline. I guess the outline's pretty senseless. That was just so that you could follow and check it off and remind me if I'm missing anything. But the PowerPoint has all the instructions that I'm doing on it, so you can refer to that later for your notes. So I've said that I want it to follow the text. I also want it to be maybe 10 points. I'm going to try 10 first, see if I like the way that looks. I try to leave it consistent. So if I have it at 10 on one place, I try to keep it at 10 on the other. So I'm going to click on OK and OK so that you can see how that changes. See what a difference that just that makes? So instead of the whole page being a part of that square, only where our text is going to be is a part of that square, and that's what we really want. Now there's one more thing that we need to talk about. Let's go back to page borders. We're going to go back to options. And this is a preference for some people. Do you want the page number and the footer, because the page number is normally in the header, it may be in your footer. Do you want your header and your footer to be within your box? Or do you want it to be without, on the outside of the box? I personally like it on the outside of the box. Some people like it on the inside of the box. What do you have to do to keep it inside the box? Surround, header, surround, footer. That's all you have to have checked. I generally deselect these because I do not want my header and my footer inside my box. So I would click on OK and OK. I'm going to go ahead and add my page number, and I'm going to put it at the top right. So I've double clicked. When you're in Word, if you want to go to the header, you just double click inside anywhere where the header's supposed to be and it'll open it up. and you'll see this little gray box that says header to let you know that, hey, you're in the header. Once I'm in the header, I'm gonna, excuse me, I'm gonna write justify, then I'm gonna go to insert, page number, top of page, and I'm gonna go down to where it says plain number 3 because that's what I want. And there's my number 1, that's my page number. I'm gonna go ahead and go into my footer and put something there as well. I'll just put my phone number. That way we have something in the footer. Okay, so now I've got my page number. I've got something in the header and the footer. I'm gonna go ahead and turn on my line numbers. So if I go to layout, you'll see line numbers. And if you click on the drop down, currently mine is set to none. I'm going to go down and set it to restart each page. Now there's my line numbers. Now if I hit enter, go all the way down and see. Okay, so this is not giving me 25 lines per page. So I'm going to go back in to my margins. And I'm going to decrease my bottom margin first because I've got a lot of space there. Okay, that gives me a little bit, not enough. Back to margins, back to custom margins. And this is what I do. I just play with it until it looks the way I want it to look. So that's still only 23. So I'm gonna go back to margins. And I'm gonna do one bottom and top and see what that gets me. Okay, that only gets me 24. So obviously I need to do something else. So I'm gonna do Control A to select all. I'm gonna go to paragraph over here to see about my spacing. Currently it's at 26.75. I'm gonna bring it down to 24. 24 points. So here we are under spacing. We've got general, we've got indentation, but spacing is what we care the most about. And if I say exactly 24 points, that's going to make it so that it's a little smaller, so that the words, the lines are a little bit closer together. So I'm going to click on OK. Now I easily have 25. As a matter of fact, I have more than enough room. So I'm going to go back and mess with that a little bit. I'm going to see what 25 does for me. That's pretty good, but do I want to leave that much room? I guess I'm okay with that for now. Okay, so I've got line numbers. I've got something in the header. I've got something in the footer. I am ready to go and separate my document. Let's assume that we want no line numbers on the covers and the index and the stipulation. We definitely want line numbers in the preceding, and we don't want it on the certificate. So that means we need 2 section breaks in our document. I'm going to go down to the bottom of the first page, and I'm going to go to the layout tab. I'm going to go to breaks, and notice that there's page breaks and section breaks. I like to use section breaks next page. And what that does is it puts my section break in here. Now, I'm going to pause for just a minute to let you all know, if you don't already, that you can see section breaks and all of that when you have show hide on. This is the show hide button. It looks like a paragraph mark. And when it's on, you can see your section breaks, you can see your hard returns, you can see whatever you have told Word you want to see. And we're going to go look at options in just a minute so that you can decide what it is you want to see. But first, we're going to finish with this. So I've got one section break in. I need one more. So I like to go to the bottom of the pages. For some reason, that's what I've done for years. I go to the bottom of the page. I go layout, breaks, insert next page, section break. Okay, now I've got all my section breaks. Before I make any changes to my document, to like turn line numbering off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and separate my sections. How do I do that? I'm going to go ahead and double click in the header. You can see header section 1. And when you go to, when you're on the header and footer tab, you can go to next to see the next section. Now here's header section 2. I want to draw your attention to the right side of the page and the words same as previous. This is a big deal right here. Same as previous needs to be turned off in order for us to make changes to one section without changing the other. So I'm going to click on same as previous right here. And what that does is it highlights, it brings this forward and it highlights it link to previous. So I'm going to click on that. And now they're not linked. So now I can go and do whatever I want in the first section and it won't affect the second section. But first, before I do that, I want to go to next and affect my section number 3. So I'm going to click on same as previous and then link to previous, and that link is gone. I can now get out of my header and footer. I'm going to go to my first page, which represents the first section, and I'm going to go layout, line numbers, none. So now the line numbers on the first page are gone, but notice when I scroll down to the second page, they're still there. Now when I go to the third page, look, they're there too. But now I'm going to turn them off on the third page. So I'll go to line numbers, none. And so now I only have line numbering on the proceedings section, and the other sections still have what I want them to have, which is the same header footer, meaning the page number and my phone number. So that's how you add section breaks. That's how you deal with section breaks. And that is how you handle borders. Any questions about any of this so far?
Hey,
I love questions.
Hey there. This is Deborah. Hi. I got going the same steps that you went. I've got 27 lines and I can't make it 25.
Do Control A to select
Okay.
all.
Yep.
And then let's go to paragraph.
Yeah.
And then what you're going to do is make sure that your spacing before and after is set to 0.
Okay.
And then go to line spacing.
Okay.
Select exactly.
Right.
And then the 12 points, change that to 25.
25. I had 24.
Well, 24 was what I tried first.
25 gives me 25. Okay.
Yay!
And the last thing before I mute again, if I'm doing courier for my transcripts, I'd like my numbers to match. And they're in Times Roman. So how can I change that?
That is a great, great question. Okay, let's go down to where the numbers are. As you can see, I've changed my numbers to reflect Courier New because I have the same wish you do. I like it all to match.
Right.
So what we need to do to affect that is we need to find our styles. So
Okay.
let's go to the Home tab
Yep.
and find styles.
Okay.
Now, once you find the styles, you can create a style, you can clear formatting, you can apply styles. What I generally do is I look for the line numbering style. I don't see it here, so I'm going to just go with create a style.
Okay.
And I generally type in line numbering, and then I go modify. And here in the modify box, we can tell it that we want our line numbers to be Courier New 14
Oh, okay.
or Courier New 12, if that's the case.
Right. Okay.
And you can simply do OK, and that should change it for you.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. It looks nice when they're all, it flows more smoothly, I think. Okay, we're gonna
Adrian,
pop in. Oh, yes, yes.
just a quick question. When you're adjusting the line number spacing and you've already set your border, is it going to push your border out or
It
is
will.
it going to ignore the border?
Well, only if you change include the border or don't include the, like include header and
Okay.
footer. That's the only time it's going to change it.
Okay.
Once you've put that in there, it's there and it's not going to change. And your text won't overrun it ever.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure. Okay, so what I'd like to do is I'd like to go look at options. So we're going to click on File, and then we're going to scroll down to Options. And there are a lot of options. I honestly believe that there are only a few that I really care about. When we go to Display, we can decide what we want to see. We can check everything if we want. And we would then see tab characters, spaces, paragraph marks, hidden text, optional hyphens, object anchors, and formatting marks. I like to show the formatting marks and I like to see object anchors, though I must admit, you guys don't use objects very much. So it really doesn't matter because an object is like a text box that you bring in, that you create. I've seen some court reporters that create a text box on their cover page, just for the caption, and you can certainly do that. But for the most part, I don't like to see all of them. I like to see my object anchors and my formatting marks, but it gets a little crazy when you turn all of it on. So there's no harm in turning anything on. So certainly you can turn anything on that makes you happy. I just find it's really busy with all this stuff on, so I don't leave it on. I do like to see the white space between pages in print layout view. I do like to see highlighter marks, and I'm okay with tooltips on hover, meaning if I point to a tool, I want it to tell me what it is. And I think that's true in all applications. I really like that. If we go to proofing, you can come over here and definitely make some decisions. I like to flag repeated words. I wanted to ignore internet and file addresses. You may not wanted to ignore those. Yeah, I think you do want to ignore those, because then I think if you don't ignore it, then it'll change it. And for transcripts, you don't want it to be changed in any way. You can decide if you want to check spelling as you type. I'm all about that. I wanted to mark grammar too. Even though we don't always get to decide what words are on the page, we do have to make the decisions about grammar. And unlike all of you, my grammar is poor. So I need all the help I can get. So I have that on. I do not show readability statistics because that's really nothing that we care about. On the Save tab, I create backups of my documents. So I have it save auto recovery information every 5 minutes. That's a long time for you guys that type like lightning. So I would do less than that if I were you guys. I'm just not that fast a typist, and I don't do a whole lot of typing. I mostly dictate. So that's why I leave it at 5 minutes. Keep the last auto recovered version. I love that. You should probably do that. I do like to auto save to OneDrive. It makes me feel better that my documents are also in the cloud. I don't know how many of you have solid state hard drives. Solid state hard drives are awesome for voice writers. It writes the text very, very fast to the drive because there's no needle going around like there was for regular hard drives. So there's less chance of a problem because there's no needle that you can knock and mess up. However, solid state hard drives, when they crash, can sometimes be a real problem when we're talking about retrieving data. So it's really important that you have backups for your system that are in the cloud as well as on your computer, if you have a solid state hard drive. We have been able to take data off of machines for years after they crashed. And the secret is to wrap your laptop in a towel and put it in the freezer and leave it there for about an hour. Get it out, unwrap it, and boot it up. It will usually come up, but that is a Hail Mary pass. So make sure that when it comes up, you back up your drive immediately, because any drive that has failed is going to keep failing if you don't optimize it and correct it and fix the way the files are lined up on the drive. So still do your optimization. Okay, what else did I want to say on this page? Not too much. This is just about backups, where you want them, and if you want backups to be created for your documents. The only other one that I really care about is, I don't think I changed any of these advanced features, but I do like to customize the ribbon. Let's talk about the ribbon. By default, you do not see your developers tab. if you look on the right side of this screen where it says customize the ribbon and you scroll down a bit, you will see what is checked and what's not checked. You can uncheck tabs that you don't want to see. You know, as a court reporter, you're not much of an outliner. You're a verbatim person. So you may not want to see the outlining tab. Fine. Uncheck it. You know, insert blog post. I don't blog, so I'm gonna take those off. Background removal. I don't care about that. I don't ever remove my background. I want everything on home. I've created my own favorites tab where I can go and have just the things I really like to use that aren't necessarily on the ribbon. Let's see what's in my tab, often used. So these are the ones that I use a lot, like the macros. Like you don't even see the ability to create macros if you don't have the developers tab checked. So you definitely want to check that developers tab because really it's not just for us developers. It's for you too. There are some things that are relevant to you on it. Primarily macros. If you wanted to create your own tab for yourself, it's really simple. All you do is create a new tab, and I might rename this. Oh, I can also add a little image to it if I want. I can name the group. I'll call this FAQs. Okay. So this might be something that I use to create all my FAQs. So there's certain things that I'm always going to want to do in an FAQ. I always want to use borders and shading. I always use section breaks because I almost always have a different first page. And I always insert pictures. So let's say that I want to add the insert picture to my FAQ, my new FAQ tab. I would just click on insert picture and click on add. And there, now my FAQs tab is going to have insert picture on it. Maybe I want to also, definitely page setup. Is something I use. Paragraph is something I use. Also, something I use is creating a table of contents. Now, keep in mind that up here at the top, it says choose commands from, and currently popular commands are chosen. I generally change that to all commands so that I can find anything and everything I want, like what I was just looking for. Oh, I like auto fit too. That's a good one. I use a lot of tables in my work. So if I wanted to add tables, I just go down to the T's and look for table. Table of contents. Ah, that's another thing I want. And table auto format, I think I'll do. So there, that's how you can add your favorite things. Let's see, let me rename the tab to documentation. Okay. So when I click on OK, I'm actually going to now have another tab. And there's my documentation tab with the things that I put on it. Now, let's talk about macros. I love, love, love macros. Macros can be used anytime you want to do something that is a repetitive task that you don't want to do again. So it's pretty simple. All you do is you click on record macro and you can name it. Let's see, what am I going to do for this macro? I'm going to call this 25 lines per page. So 25 LPP. And I'm going to click on OK. Okay. You can't name it in the beginning or it has a fit. So it'll be macro 3 and I'll have to go and rename it afterwards. Okay. Now, first thing I want you to notice is when you start recording a macro, your icon changes to this arrow with the little tape recorder. That's to let you know, hey, you're recording. And I appreciate that reminder. So I'm going to just go and do what we did a minute ago with Deb. So I'm going to go to paragraph. Oh, cancel. I should have done Control A to select all, then paragraph, and then set this to 0 before and after, line spacing exactly 25, and OK. And then I'll make sure that I do in fact have 25 lines per page. And then what I do is I hit the left arrow so that I automatically go to the top of the document. And now I'm done with my macro. So I'm ready to stop it. I need to go back to the developers tab. Wait a minute. Yeah. And I need to hit stop recording. I have just created a macro. So where do we go and look at our macros? This right here on the little macro tab here, if you click on macros, you'll go and you'll see what all your macros are. Now, I just created this macro number 3, and I can go to the organizer. I can take the macros that I've created and I can move them, copy them to this document so that my macros are married to this document, basically. This is the way you move macros from one person to another. You actually come in here, you take the new macros, you move them over to the document, and then you save your document and you send your document to your friend. And what they're going to do, or let's say you send it to yourself on your other computer because you want Word on both of your computers to have the same macros. Well, you would come into the document, you would open it up, and you would do the exact opposite. You would copy the new macros over to your normal.dot. Your normal.dot is Word's template directory. Think of it like that. That's where all your Word templates live. We don't use a whole lot of Word templates, but there are Word templates for everything: business letters, presentations. If you can dream it, there's a Word template for it. So once I've put my new macros into the document, I can close and say, okay, I know that my macros are in this document. I can now save my document. Now, you want to save it as a Word document. If you have macros, you want to save it as a Word macro enabled document, which is a .docm. And you can browse to wherever you want. And I'll call this my 25 line per page Word template. And I am going to save that in my documents and save. And so now I know that I can move this document over to my other computer, and I can move those macros that I've created on this computer over to that computer. And that's pretty cool. Another thing that was in options that I didn't talk about is autocorrect options, and that's on the proofing tab. Autocorrect options lets you go in here and say, okay, when I type in ATT, I want you to write Adria T. Terrio because that's my name. When I type in MSW, I wanted to write Microsoft Word. When I write WPD, I wanted to write Corel WordPerfect. When I say RC, I wanted to write right click. DC is double click for me because remember, I'm a geek, not a court reporter. So I write all this documentation. So I'm forever having to type in right click, left click, double click. So I have shorts for all of those things and I use them so much. So you can come and make briefs for yourself in here in the autocorrect options. You can also come to the auto format as you type. And I'll give you a little secret here. You'll notice that on mine, replace as you type, straight quotes, fractions, and bold and italic are all unchecked. And I'll tell you why. If you go try to create an ASCII with smart quotes or fractions or, well, you can do, no, it'll wipe out the bold and italic as well. It'll error. Your ASCII creator will error on the smart quotes and the fractions. So you do not want to use this. You do not want to use these first three at all. You want those unchecked. Okay? The rest of these are personal preferences. You do not want ordinals first with superscript because that's going to error it as well. Now you can do hyphens with dash. That's something that I think I'm going to turn on because that's something that I think you guys like, right? The single dash, you want it, or am I wrong? Do you want it to be a double dash? You want it to be the double? Okay, so we'll uncheck that. I knew that was a good reason I had that unchecked. My court reporters told me to. Okay, so autocorrect is a very cool thing. A very cool thing. And just make sure that your auto formats are not wrong. That'll help you out a lot. Okay, so that's the most important thing about the options. So let me see what I have and have not done. Oh, find and replace. We also need to talk about fonts. Okay.
Before you move forward,
Yes.
so the autocorrect is under Word options.
So you
I
go
got
to,
lost while I was taking a note. I'm sorry.
oh, no worries. You click on File and then Options.
And then the autocorrect is in there under.
It's on proofing.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so let's talk about spell check. I have another document open with some words in it. I thought I did. Okay. Okay, so let's do some, there probably aren't any, ooh, look. This is a good example. There are smart quotes. These are smart quotes. And you can tell because they're like this instead of just like this. You know, straight quotes are the older ones. And so those are the ones that the ASCII will respect. But the ASCII will not respect the smart quotes. It'll throw an error. So if ever you're trying to create an ASCII and it just stops, that's the problem. There's a weird character in there. And it's almost always smart formatting that causes us issues. So let me see if I can find something that we can look up. Okay, let's pretend that we want to turn this PH into the word phone. So I'm gonna do Control F for find. Oh no, I don't want to do that. I want to do find and replace. So is it Control R? No.
I think it's H. Find and replace is Control H, right?
I didn't hear what you said.
H like Harry.
It's like what?
Control H like Harry.
Oh. It's not bringing it up.
To do a find and replace?
Yeah.
Huh.
But this is the latest version. Like
Oh.
it just updated and it's definitely different. It used to be on the home screen, you would go to find and replace,
Hmm.
but I don't see it right now. Let's see.
Is it not under the home button editing, which was towards the end?
Ah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Okay, so let's go to replace. Now, the secret is to go to more, because more gives you all of this advantage. So let's say that you wanted to find pH, right? But you want to specifically find only the pH that is lowercase. So you want to match the case because you don't want it looking for that pH in any other way. And you want to replace it with phone. And then you replace all. And it made the replacements. This is very helpful if ever you are stuck because like let's say here's your formatting, but you turn it into the agency and they're like, oh my goodness, you used the totally wrong format. And you're like, no. And it requires that you add, say, an indent. You can do that. You can actually do that. You can say, well, I'm going to find THE in all caps, and I'm going to replace it with, I still want to match the case, but I want to put in some special formatting. let's see, I'm gonna go to paragraph and I'm gonna put in an indent, a hanging indent. Let's see, let's do a hanging indent of 5. So we've inserted a hanging indent and then replace the word. Let's see what happens. That's not what we wanted to happen. Okay, so I'm going to do Control Z. Because undo is my favorite thing ever. And we're going to go back to editing and replace. And we'll, instead of doing the hanging indent, we'll do the first line indent. Let's see. So I'm going to do an indent of, first line indent of 5. Didn't make any replacements. You can just click on no formatting to make it disappear. To make the formatting disappear. Let's see, the reporter, colon, space, the court reporter, colon. Okay, this is a good example. You see how there's now no space between the court reporter and I? I'm going to go in there and say, okay, well, I screwed that up. So Control C, Control V. And I'm just going to add 2 spaces and replace all. So using spaces, using tabs, using indents helps you find things, and it helps you replace things that otherwise would be very difficult to replace. You can sometimes do the asterisk, star, asterisk, and then colon. And what that says is asterisk dot asterisk. That should bring up everything that has a the. I guess that doesn't work anymore. That used to be an old DOS command, but I guess Windows doesn't like it. It used to allow you to find things that have something in common but aren't completely the same. So that way I would have been able to replace the court reporter and the witness because it started with a V and it ended with a colon, but it doesn't look like that's working anymore, which is too bad. Okay, let's see. Fonts. Let's talk about fonts for a minute. A lot of people are not informed as to why we use Courier New 12 or Courier New 14. Around the country today, Courier New 12, 13, and 14 are used. In North Carolina, they started using Monotype Corsiva, I think it is. It's a very pretty font, much prettier than Courier New. But the thing about Courier New, as opposed to any other font, is that Courier New is the widest font available. And every, well, no, that's not true. It's not a true type font. True type fonts make sure that every letter takes the same amount of space. Courier New does not do that. Well, actually, Courier New does do that because it is a true type font. Okay, because it says this is a true type font. When you use Times New Roman, which some states allow you to use, you are affecting your number of pages greatly. And to illustrate this, I'm going to change this to Courier New, to Times New Roman. I'm going to repeat the same thing in Courier New. Do you see how many more spaces it's taking up? That's pages, that's money. And that is why everyone uses Courier New. It's certainly not because it's the most attractive font on the planet, because it's certainly not. But it is the widest font, and it is very readable because every letter takes the same amount of space, so nothing's all squunched together. So that's what I wanted to share with you in regards to fonts. Know this: if you want to use a different font, just make sure you're taking up the same amount of space. And you can do that by expanding a normal font. I don't ever suggest that people expand fonts if they're using Courier New, because that would be ridiculous. But if you're using Times New Roman or like Arial Narrow, you really are giving away money. Put it like that. Let's talk about characters per line. Here's how I determine characters per line. I start here at the front and I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I highlight the 10 and I bold it. This will make sense in a minute. Okay, so this particular transcript has 10, 20, 30, 40, 55 characters per line. It is normally required that you have at least 56 characters per line. That does differ from state to state. Georgia has very strict guidelines. Texas has very strict guidelines. So there are some states that have virtually lets you do whatever you want. But there are some states that are very, very strict. So this is Courier New 12. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to copy this here, put it in the exact same starting point, and I'm going to change this to Times New Roman. I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to change it to Monotype Cursiva. No, it can't be that one, because I only have that in italics, so that can't be it. Let me try Lucida. I love Lucida Sans. Okay, Lucida Sans 12 is just about the only thing that is bigger than Courier New 12. But it still allows for the same amount of characters per line, whereas that's not so true here. You can see that it's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Oh, 20, 40, 50, 60. Okay, if we go back to the same position here. So actually, oh, this is times. Yeah. 67. That's a lot more characters. That's a lot more characters. So you can see the importance of font here. I will show you how fonts are expanded. If you go to no, that's not it. Okay, so we're at the font selection. If we go to advanced, you can see character spacing, and right now the scale is 100%. I normally go to the next one, which is spacing, normal, and go to expanded. If you expand it by 1 point, you can see what a difference that makes. Generally, I suggest if you're going to expand something that you start off with something much smaller, like 0.3. That way it expands just a little bit, not a lot. And the only time you want to use expansion is when you're trying to use a font that does not equate, that does not equal being as wide as Courier New. So Times New Roman's a great example. I'm going to try 0.3 and see how that does. Okay, so 0.3 actually expanded it. Let's see. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Not enough. So I'll go back to formatting, expanded, and I'll do 0.6. We're still not getting there. So let's see what 1 does. Ah, you're much closer now. It looks like 1.1 might just do the trick. It's pretty close. You still have 1 more character, so you could go like 1.2, and that would probably do it. So the whole point of expansion is not to cheat. I would never encourage anybody to do that. But I have had customers who've come to me over the years and said, my judge has come to me and said, I cannot look at this font anymore. I want something else. I want something different. I want it to be bigger. I want it to be more readable. And what we actually did was go in and find a font that the judge liked. We let him pick the font. And then we came into Word and we played with it like this to make sure that the font he liked gave us the exact amount of characters per line that Courier New did. And we explained it to him also. And he really appreciated it. He had no knowledge of that. He did not know that we could even make those changes and accommodate those changes. And so he was very pleased to have a more readable font, yet to be paying the same amount as he was paying before for transcripts. So any questions about font and characters per line? We talked about line numbering and lines per page. We talked about headers and footers and section breaks and managing sections. Okay, the spell checker. Oh, you know what? While we're talking,
I do have a question, Adria, but it's kind of taken a step back. But somebody, I think it was Deborah, said that Control Z, or she said Control H was find and replace, and Control Z was undo. Where can you print out all the control commands?
Oh, that is such a smart question. I am not sure. Let me see. Oh, Windows, no, Office.
While she's looking at that, it's so funny. I'm 54 and I've been doing word processing since I was like maybe 19. I started as a little secretary. And these kids these days with this mouse, it just takes so much time to me. I would rather just do my hotkeys and keep it moving. But like my kids, they're all about the mouse and well, Mom, you got to highlight this and then you do. No, it's about the control for me.
You are so right, Deborah. When you keep your hands on the keyboards, you are faster.
Yes.
And so I've tried to teach my customers as well to keep their hands on the keyboards. I love hotkeys. And Leslie, what I did was I just went into the help and I did keyboard shortcuts in Office, and it will give you like, okay, keyboard shortcuts in Word, frequently used shortcuts. So there you go.
Thanks.
You are so welcome.
I'm not young either, Deborah. So I remember some of the old DOS commands.
Oh yeah.
I think we're very very similar ages. When I was in college, I was 19, and No, yeah, because I started at LSU and then I transferred to UL in Lafayette. And when I did, I went to work for my dad's computer company. And I started learning, well, I had been learning word processors since I was 15 because I like to write poetry and I hate to type. And so my dad said, Here, it's called a word processor. He was an IBM reseller. And
Nice.
so IBM sent him word processors. And he said, Nobody here cares about it, but you might. And so I learned it. And it turned out a few years later, everybody wanted to learn it. So I went to work for him teaching secretaries how to use the whole suite, the whole Word Perfect suite back then, the AmiPro suite. I
Me
had to
pro. Oh
learn.
my gosh.
The first word processor I learned had no name,
Mm-hmm.
and it came on a floppy about this big,
5 1/4.
and I used it on dumb terminals. I mean, with orange um, text on a black screen, if you recall. And then I learned word star. which
Yes.
and you better know your hotkeys, right? And
Wow.
and then I started learning after that all the Ami Pro suite, and then Word Perfect came around, and then Microsoft Word came around. And so I've been doing this for a long, long time, and I believe hotkeys are the way to go. When I am at my fastest, it's because I'm using hotkeys. I agree with you 100%. Okay, spell check is pretty easy.
I have a question.
Yes,
It
please.
goes back to the macros, which it's probably a very stupid question what I'm about to ask, but
No.
so you saved it to like your desktop or whatever. After you created the macro in the document, you saved it to your desktop, or I guess
No,
can you save it to a USB, or where did you save it, I guess? Because you're
no,
saying you can take it from one computer to the next. So I have
yes.
another computer right here. How would I like, I mean, do
It's
I
it's
literally
a
use a USB, or can I email it to myself and then it's still like,
you can email it to
okay,
yourself. All you need to remember is that when you go to macros, and when you go to macros, it'll list all your macros. Like there's no macros in this document. Let me go to my, let's see, SpeechCat template should have the macros. Let's see. Nope. Trying to figure out what I was in when I did the macros. Must have been a different um let's see, I saved it to my documents. I saved it's a document.
okay.
So I'm gonna go to my documents, browse.
Can you search it by the extension? I think you named it the macro enabled document, so it had a different extension.
That's
Doc
exactly right.
M.
It had the doc CM.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. I could have sworn I put it in my documents, but maybe I didn't. Okay. Um, it's gotta be in one of these documents. Okay, I'm just gonna create a macro real quick so that I can show you. Okay, Okay, I'll stop the macro. Okay, now I can go to macros, and there's my little macro. Now I need to go to organizer.
Mm-hmm.
And from here, I simply click here and I do copy.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's in this current document that I have open. So I can close it and I can do file, save as, go to browse, documents. Do my macros, and then instead of saving it as a docx,
Mm-hmm.
save it as a Word enabled document, a docm rather. And you just hit save and then email that file to yourself
And then,
open it on your other computer.
okay.
Then you're going to do the opposite. You're going to click on new macros on the left and copy it to the right.
And then macros will be installed on that one.
And then yes, and then you save the document,
Okay.
and then your macros will now be on that one.
Okay, got it.
That's a great question, by the
No.
way. Great question.
No, it was kind of dumb, but I was like, maybe it's a different, I don't know. I never knew about macros, so.
Yes, it's a wonderful thing. You will love it.
Yeah,
You will love it. Once you start using it, you will absolutely love it.
thank you.
You're so welcome. Okay, references. No, not references. It must be review. The spell check. You know, I don't normally go, way back in the day, we used to go and run the spell checker. But now you don't have to run it. You just look through your document. And if you have something misspelled, you can be sure that Dragon's going to tell you, what do you want to do? You can right click on it and say, okay, well, add that name to my dictionary. And I just go through and I say, okay, well, is that wrong? Is that spelled wrong? Or do I want to add it to my dictionary? I want to add it to my dictionary. And so I just go through and I right click on all of these that are underlined, and I try to find out, why is it that it's underlined? Is it spelled wrong? Is the grammar bad? Do I need a comma? Whatever. And right here, this is telling me I need a comma. So I could just click on this one and it would add the comma for me. Spell check has become the most common, useful tool that we no longer think about, any of us. We don't even think about it anymore. It is pretty much automated. I encourage you to add things to your dictionary as you are going and looking through. Okay, there's one thing that I really want to talk about, and that is widow orphan control. This is a demon. It should have horns. It is really, really bad. Widow orphan, the only people that use widow orphan, and I don't think they even use it anymore, is the military, because the military never wants a question and an answer on different pages. So if you can't fit the whole question and the whole answer on the bottom of that page number 40, then you have to hit it. You have to hit Control Enter and send it onto a new page. And you need to, and you'll have like a space this big at the bottom. They don't care. Question and answer had to be on the same page. That is not true, not true, not true for court reporting in the civilian world. And so if we go to home and font, no, it can't be font. It's not here. paragraph. Yes. Okay. So it's actually the paragraph on the ribbon that you go to, and you know, that's where we decided we were going to use exactly 25 for our line numbers. And then if you go to the second tab, you will see widow orphan control. This must be unchecked. Keep with next must be unchecked. Keep lines together must be unchecked. You want all these unchecked. Except for don't hyphenate. I don't know if you guys hyphenate or not. That's not something I would know. So that's more of a you thing, but all the others you do not want checked. And if ever you go and you see, like you're going through your document and you see a page that has 22 lines on it, it's almost always widow orphan control. So right there, go into paragraph, go to line and page breaks, and make sure widow orphan control is not checked. That's one that sneaks away from us, you guys. We don't think about that every day. And so it sneaks away from us.
Adria, I guess I don't really know what the definition of widow and orphans is.
Okay.
Is it stray characters?
It's more like, think of it like this: a mother and a child should never be separated.
Okay.
So mother is the question and the child is the answer. And so, though, no, that's just for the military. Mother is question and the beginning of the answer, but the rest of the answer wraps onto the next page. Only it doesn't.
So, well, I don't do that, obviously, since I'm a court reporter, not in the military. But I've been taught that when you have a name, that you want the Mr. or Mrs. or the first and last name to be on the same line.
Oh, that makes sense.
And I'm not sure. I guess that might be too particular to even make a rule for. I just fix it in proofreading. And also something like if you have your double dash, not to have one at the beginning of a line. So I have to go pull a word down from the previous line so that I don't have the double dash at the beginning of a line.
Oh, well, thank you. You're educating me, Leslie. Thank you.
I don't know how other people do it. That's just how I was taught.
Well, there's nothing wrong with any of that. What we're talking about really is something much bigger.
Okay.
It's a paragraph. Think of it like that. Widow orphan does not allow you to separate a paragraph between pages.
Okay.
It wants to keep it together. And while that's lovely, that's not the way our rules work. And
Okay.
so that can be very irritating to you guys. And it's something that we all tend to forget about. Okay, that's it, you guys. So any questions? Anything at all about Word? Anything?
So I'm going to be the problem child. Sorry.
No, not a problem.
Will you walk through those strokes one more time to make my line numbers match the body of my text? It just.
Oh, yes.
So what I have up on my screen is I've got my box. My numbers 1 through 25 are outside the left side because we didn't want them inside. And I have 25 lines on my page. But I know that I'm going to create my document in Courier New 12. My numbers default, my font must default to Times New Roman. So if you can walk me through that one more time.
You got that. Okay, So the most important thing is to find your styles. You got to find where the styles are.
Now, then my styles are up on the top, and I get that. I've never, I don't do anything but make this thing produce documents. I don't do styles and all that stuff. So I've got all the styles up there, but I don't know what you mean by find my style.
Okay. What I mean is this. There is a style for line numbering.
Okay.
Just like there's a style for header 1, for header 2, for header 3. You guys don't use that, but I use it a lot in documentation.
Okay.
Which is how I learned about it, really, because I needed to be able to affect that style.
Okay.
So in order to affect the style, you have to find the style.
Now, I thought you went through something that you created something for line.
I did. I created a style because I couldn't find the
Right.
style in the other document.
Okay.
Now I'm in a transcript, and the reason I couldn't find it in the other document was because I didn't have any text.
Okay.
So once you have text and you have line numbers on, then you can go up to where your styles are, find your line number style,
Yes.
and go to modify.
Okay.
And then in modify, we want to see, this is question Q. This must be what he calls, this is his format for line numbers.
Okay.
So if I wanted to change the format of the numbers, I would go to format font and just change it to, let's see, I'm going to change it to Corbel Light.
Okay.
And I'll do 9 and bold and okay and okay. Oh, okay. That didn't work. It changed the text instead of the line number. Okay, let's see. All right. It doesn't seem to be, it's not showing us. Let's see. Here we go. Maybe we can find it here. List table, list table, list table. Where's line number? See, when you're looking at these styles, this is generally where you're going to find all the styles that you have access to.
Okay. Okay. That was what I missed. So I will go through that list and
And
find it.
you should be able to find it and then edit that specific. For some reason, he must have changed the name of his to this quest queue,
Okay.
because this isn't my document. This is a customer's document.
Yep.
So he must have changed the line numbering, because you should have a style called line numbering.
Okay. I will peruse through those.
Peruse through those. And if you need any additional help, let me know and I'll look up the instructions for you.
Thank you, ma'am.
No problem. Any other questions? I love questions.
I'll throw one out there.
Okay.
When I have a deposition, I'm going to send it to my boss and she's going to turn it into an E-Tran so I can do the condensed and the word index and get that ready for my client.
Right.
But before I do that, I have to print it I have to make it a PRN file. And one of the things, when you had it's the paragraph symbol, the show hide.
Yes.
Clicked, when you have that clicked and you can see everything, I've gotten in the habit of going to looking at going to view and looking at multiple pages so I can look at the margins and make sure I don't have a lot of extraneous characters. because if you have that and then you print to a PRN, it seems to throw everything off. Is there a quick way to do that? Or do you have to just do it like painstakingly like I'm doing it?
You mean just to create the PRN?
No, just to clean up the empty space that might be at the end of a line, like where something, like where I've got my border lines, sometimes there'll be like an extraneous tab or something at the end of a sentence, and there'll be a marker in my margin, and then it throws it off when I send it to, when I print it to a PRN. And then when I get my ETRAN back, because it had that extra empty space in there, you can just see errors in the ETRAN. I don't know if everybody here does court work or if everybody does depots as well. But it's just, I've learned how to deal with it. I just wondered if there was an easy way to remove that empty space, like where you have an extraneous space or a tab that throws your
That throws
characters
it off.
into the margin.
I know exactly what you're talking about because I've seen it before. I've dialed
Okay.
into people and I've seen words in the margin. The thing is, Leslie, I don't know how they get there. Like,
Well, I'm old school, so I still put 2 spaces after every period.
as do I.
And sometimes that's enough to push empty space into that right-hand margin.
Okay.
It shouldn't, but when you
Shouldn't.
turn on the show hide, sometimes you'll see something, you'll see the dots that indicate there's something out there.
Something more.
Right.
That's correct. Well, that's why I leave show hide on constantly.
Okay.
Because honestly, if I don't, also long ago, and Ginger may remember this, but long ago, we used to have there was a hotkey that people would hit that would hide text in scope. Do you remember that, Ginger? No? It must have never happened to you, but it only happened to a few people. So it must have been a crazy hotkey that they were accidentally hitting. But text was being hidden. And so they'd see it in scope, because in scope, you can't hide text. But then when you go to Word, the text is missing. Well, you turn on show hide and voila, there's the text, because the text was hidden somehow. Now, I haven't seen this happen in years. But back then, the only way to see that was to turn on show hide. And ever since, I've left show hide on. And I only turn it off if I'm wanting to really see how everything's looking without that, just to get a quick glimpse. But I'll tell you, Leslie, what you just said about viewing side to side and viewing multiple, that's brilliant. That is really brilliant, because that lets you see your margins. It lets you see all the way to the end of the page. So that way you would make sure that there was nothing in the margins.
Yeah, I always go to view multiple pages. Well, particularly with a depot, just because I know, and you didn't talk about printing to a PRN.
Let's do that. Because we do need to do that. So let's do that real quick. Printing to a PRN and a PDF. Okay, let's do PDF first because it's so super easy. You go to File and Print. And then instead of selecting your printer, click on that drop down and go to Microsoft Print to PDF. This is free and it makes a beautiful PDF. No problems at all. Just print. It comes up, it tells you where do you want to put it. Want to put it here. And there we go. And then it'll come up and show me my PDF. Let's see. My PDF is already open, so close it so that I can. Well, you know what a PDF looks like. I don't need to go through opening it, do I? Okay, so let's go to PRN. File, print. Okay, now when we get here, we need to do print to file. That's not there. It's under printer properties. Nope. Advanced. Oh, I hate it when Microsoft moves everything on me. Print. Here we go. Print. Custom print. No. Only print evens. No.
It's been a long time since I set mine up, but it seems like you have to do the generic text and add that as a printer option.
That's right.
That might be it.
Oh, look here. I just didn't look down enough. So when you click on the drop down, if you go to the very last thing, it's print to file. It used to be in a totally different place. Okay, so we go print to file and we go print, and it automatically is going to come up and say, what do you want to call your file? That's not what I wanted though. Generic. Oh, do I not have a generic text printer? That's what the problem is. I don't have a generic text printer yet. Okay, let me go and quickly add one. That's kind of beneficial too. Okay, so start. This is Windows 11, by the way. I just drew a blank. What am I doing?
Since you mentioned that, do you recommend Windows 11?
I love it. I love it. It updates.
Is it ready for AudioScribe?
Oh yeah. I've been using it.
To sync with AudioScribe, I mean.
It is absolutely no problem. And the update, by the way, is nothing. It does not take long.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so in Windows 11, just like in Windows 10, you know, in Windows 10 we had this little type here. You could type in whatever you wanted and it would come up. Well, now it's up here. So if I do add a printer, it'll come up and say, okay, here, let's go add a printer. So now I'm going to say generic text only. And this is a little different than it used to be. Well, no kidding. That's why I want to add the printer. Okay, generic text printer. Now it comes to the normal place. So it is easier to add the generic text printer. Okay, so now I should have the generic text printer. Now I should go File, Print, click on the drop down, select where is it? I don't see it. It still has not added the generic text printer.
And I know the application I use it for is to send it off to get an ETRAN, the file converted into the ETRAN file.
Yes.
But if you're doing ASCII files, do you use that also?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
ASCII files, you can't do that in Word. You can do it
What
in
I mean is, do you use the generic printer? Do you create the file using that generic printer, or is that
No.
something totally different?
No, it's something totally different.
Okay.
And that's in SpeechCat.
Oh,
Because Word doesn't create an ASCII. This is when it should bring up that generic. I know I had a generic printer installed. I don't know what happened to it. Or I wonder if 11 doesn't use them. Because normally this, I mean, I've added the printer.
that's why we're all afraid to upgrade.
Yeah, I can see what I can understand that. I wonder why it's not giving me. It let me select it. I wonder if it's. Let me close out of. I probably have too much open. So it's basically telling me that it's already there, only it's not. Shh. Okay, it says that it's working properly and that it's there. However, go to printers. It used to be that there was a little box that you would check that's just said print to file. There it is. Okay, I had to exit Word. That was the problem. Okay, so now that I have generic text printer selected, now I can click on print to file. Now I can click on print and it's going to come up and say, okay, what do you want to name this? I want to name it my PRN. And I'm going to put it C ASCII files. I'll put it with that. This is from a table, of course. And it certainly didn't like the table. Okay, this is, let me do this one. Well, this is already pretty much in generic format. It's gotta be a Word document. Oh, okay, let me go and get one of my documents out of. Okay. Trying to find one with line numbers at least. Okay. This one only has 24 lines per page by design, but otherwise, that's your PRN, nice and plain. The hardest part is figuring out where your PRN, where your print to file is. But for you guys, it should all be a lot easier to find. It's usually under the printer properties that we saw. All of these, I record all of my classes. So in a few days, you will get an email with the link to the recording on YouTube, and you can go and watch it as much as you like. If you have any questions about Word, please don't hesitate to email me or text me. My phone number is 337 852 9049. If I don't answer you, just give me some time. I might be on the phone with a customer, but I will get back to you. Thank you all for attending tonight. I hope you're all feeling well, and I hope you have a very healthy family, and I hope you have a beautiful holiday season.
Thank you so much.
You, Adrian.
I think I'll see you on Thursday.
Oh, great. Thank
Yeah,
you
I'm
all.
thinking about- Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thanks.